Losing my little sound effects, and I hate the fact that I have to format the SD card every time we do this.
Can you get a Rodecaster? Maybe I'll get a Rodecaster Mini. Is that one of those?
I mean, I could bring the other one over and just do it the old-fashioned way.
It's just so big.
That's what she said. Still have that one.
Shimmy, shimmy, Cocoa Bop. Shimmy, shimmy.
All right, so it's been a couple of weeks, but here we are, finally getting underway at long last. And we have to hurry because I have to take my dog for a haircut.
Yeah, I'm very concerned with this dog of yours and the haircut. And apparently there is a meth addict cutting the dog's hair.
Well, she's the assistant, and
she's also a fan of the show. So just
no, for all I know, she listens to the show. I mean, she's like one of those people who has left meth behind, but meth has not left her behind.
Yes.
You know what I mean? She still carries the aura, a penumbra of meth around her, if you will.
There's a glow.
It's the meth glow.
Meth glow, yeah.
That and there's some dental concerns. But, I'm not here to cast stones or small rocks, as the case may be, because apparently we're talking about cocaine this week, a subject near and dear to my faltering heart.
Yeah, crack cocaine, and all the fun and pain you can have with it.
Oh boy.
Yeah, sorry we had to take a dark week last week. I blame my partner who has obligations and driving around, colleging and that sort of thing, and it's just work. And
last week was a fucking ball buster, man, for a variety of reasons. We can talk about it. Let's say the thing you need to say, and then we'll move into it.
And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat X.
And I'm Mike R.
And boy, do we have a show for you today on
Talk like a pirate day.
We discuss Bill Clegg's seminal work, Portrait of an Addict as a Young Man, and it's basically a harrowing crackalogue, and it's a pretty interesting book, and it's Mike and Nat in the morning. All this and more today on a very special edition of RMA. Hey, welcome back, Cotter.
Yes, thanks. Did I go somewhere?
You did. You went.
I went to Scranton.
Right. You were visiting the home of the show, The Office.
Yeah, you watch The Office and you'd think Scranton is some Shangri-La of offices, but really it's just a dump. With all apologies to anybody that lives in Scranton.
Yeah.
I mean, downtown's kind of I don't think anyone would come on and argue with me that downtown Scranton is some sort of pinnacle of urban sophistication. But, I had to drop a very reluctant son off at college.
Yeah.
He, the night before, just decided to drop on us that he hates everything and he doesn't want to go and all this other stuff.
God, I know the feeling.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, you have a week to let me know if you're going to carry this through so I can get my money back. But if I don't hear from you, then in for a penny, in for a fucking pound, in for 20 grand. So I haven't heard anything. So
not everybody's college experience is,
linear.
Yeah.
Mine certainly wasn't.
I mean, as many of you know, it took me 22 years to complete my undergraduate. Thank you. That was a big day for me. Sometimes I just pick that degree up and stare at it and go, yeah, that's me.
Right.
I'm a bachelor now.
Yeah.
I can do whatever I want. Sorry, honey.
Yeah, I was right behind you 13 years, and I don't know. I've met very few people who's taken as long as you and I.
Yeah.
Most people are like, wow, it took me 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, man. I'm like, you have no idea.
No idea.
No idea.
So yeah, that was part of the week, and then my son Jack had his
Birthday. Yes, how old?
16th birthday.
Oy vey.
So this week is always mixed with sadness and happiness at the same time because his birth coincided with the death of my wife, unfortunately.
Oh wow!
So it's always
That's right.
like a mixed bag. Although I've never, I always try to make sure that he does not associate those two events in his mind with one another. But that conversation is going to have to be had at some point in a little more detail. But
that's tough.
But he wanted to go into the city with his friends and walk around without us, without me. So I was like, okay, we convinced the other parents that this was a good idea.
Where in the city? Just like anywhere?
They wanted to see Times Square, Chinatown, and Soho, I guess.
Not Funky Town?
Not Funky Town.
You avoided Funky Town.
I did not take them to Funky Town.
Yeah.
That's Funky Town.
That's it.
So I took them in and I left, and I, thanks to Find My iPhone, I could see where they were.
Yeah, I love that.
So I just sort of tracked them, I shadowed them around the city, not like a block away or anything. I brought my camera, I took pictures.
Yeah.
But I just knew where they were and, checked in every couple of hours. And
I noticed you were writing me back at length. I'm like, I guess he's got some time or something, So I'm having a real conversation, yeah.
Well, like any true New Yorker, my son, lasted 5 minutes in Times Square. He's like, there's nothing here. This place sucks. And then they got on the subway and went downtown.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that, so I'm kind of lingering around in Times Square. I saw the naked cowboy, and desnudas, the women who just stand there with no clothes on and take pictures with tourists for money. And I saw Elmo get into a fight with Spider-Man, and it was the usual hijinks going on in Times Square.
Yeah, that naked cowboy's got to be 70 years old now.
He looks good.
Yeah.
The
naked cowboy's in good shape.
He's just wearing his, diaper or whatever that thing is that he wears. And it was kind of funny because it was chilly that day, and he
doesn't care.
He doesn't care. He just walks around.
He's like a mailman, neither rain nor snow nor sleet.
Yeah.
There will be a naked cowboy.
Yeah. God wonders
what
kind of drugs he's on to keep him out there in all those weather scenarios. But
I would love to get him on the show.
So I had a moment though. I'm down to. I don't really hang out in the city. If I go to the city, I go.
You're doing something.
I go to do something. I go to a museum. I go to a thing, a show, or something. But so this is the first time I really walked around Manhattan in years.
How does it look?
It's very different, but that's why they call it New York.
Right.
Every time. But there were some things that were old. For example, the area around Canal Street. There's a little park in Chinatown. I don't know if you know where that is. There's guys in there who play Chinese checkers. It's all like Chinese immigrants.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Mostly older. And the first thing I see is these two cops surrounding this 80-year-old Chinese man. And they're giving him a ticket for drinking out of a bag. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, guys.
Really?
The Tombs is literally a block away. The courthouses are all right there. And these cops are just going around picking off the low-hanging fruit, I guess, towards the end of January. They need to
meet them quotas.
But this guy is wasted. He's 80 years old. He has no idea what's happening around him. And his friend is explaining and is translating and he's drunk too, between the cops and the guy that he has to go to court and all this. And I'm like, this guy's not going to court. He doesn't even know where court is, even though it's 2 blocks away.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Then I used the bathroom in that park, and I haven't been in a New York City public bathroom.
Public bathroom?
Yeah.
What is it? I didn't even know they had them.
There were people living in there. It was it was like
so it's nice then.
No.
Oh, but they're
no. There was urine everywhere, on the walls, on the floor, and then bloodstained fucking toilet paper. I'm like, Jesus Christ! Does anybody come in here and hose it out once a day?
Did it have the blood spray on the ceiling?
No,
that's
I know what that is,
and
I don't. These are old Chinese men. I think they just missed the bowl. Right. So I was down there around 5:00, right? And I used to hang out in that neighborhood because I used to work in that neighborhood. So I'd get my lunch in Chinatown, 3 out of 5 days of the week. And then after work, my wife, who passed away, she worked in the courts there because she was public defender. And so I would meet down at Winnie's or some of these other New York City bars. right in Chinatown, and that was a little bit of a trigger, just because it had been so many years. But I remembered what it was like to sort of roll out of the office, roll out of the courthouse, and go to these bars, and then sit in there. And now I'm like a kid in the candy store. Like I look through the window, and all these people are drinking whiskey and all this stuff. Wow. And it's not there was nostalgia certainly, but there was no desire to go in and participate.
That's interesting. Because this book that we're talking about today is like it takes place in New York, and it's all about crack. And when I was listening to it, I was thinking about doing it for the show, but I honestly had some hesitation to send it over to you because I knew I'm like, should we even do this? I don't want to like make you uncomfortable because. It's just like I felt like reading it, like it really like ticks all those boxes.
Oh yes,
for like triggering, even for me, just because I also, not to that extent, but the crack. I remember going after crack like that, mentality, and the way that this Bill Clegg describes how he was feeling when he was doing it. It's so. I don't know. It's like it's really colorful. I guess you could say. It really paints a picture that takes me back in not the best way.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it when we get into the book, I guess. But he was right on the money with a lot of that stuff. Yeah. And the fact that he's a writer and a literary agent he's able to drive the point home. But one overarching thing I will say about listening to a book like that is I don't find it triggering so much as it just reminds me of how bad it was and how I never want to feel that way again. So in that respect, it reinforces my sobriety.
He doesn't romanticize it. That's
no. I mean, he very matter of fact.
Yeah,
it comes out.
Yeah, he's pretty poetic, but yeah. So that's going to be a pretty good discussion. But it just brings back like where we are in recovery to be in those scenarios. Like I remember when that was really going to be deadly for me.
Yeah.
But like to be back in your old stomping grounds or to like. Listen to a book that could trigger you. I mean, you still feel like, you're at a place where you can observe it objectively, sort of like, I think of it like I'm outside my body, like seeing those things. I don't live, those feelings anymore of like craving and things like that.
No, but it definitely gives you the feels for that feeling of Sunday morning coming down as the song goes, like, you definitely feel the sun poking over the horizon at 7 a.m. and the oh shits, what have I done with my life? Like that came back to me as if it was yesterday.
Wow.
And I felt like I had a low grade depressive crack hangover the entire time I was listening to the book. But before we get into that, you may recall that after I got back from Scranton, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at my phone, and you text me out of the blue, and you're like, "Are you going to the science fair?" And I'm like,
"The 7th grade science fair
are you talking about?" And then I remembered that it was a thing.
Yeah.
So we went.
Well, it had been such a big deal in our house, just like we were stressing about it. Noah wasn't doing it, like many of his projects. It was just pushed to get it done, and he did it, and I thought everybody was going through this, So, of course, I figured I'd run into you and Ben, and then I texted you, you're like, what are you talking about? I don't think we have to go.
I knew about it, right? But I wasn't going to go, and Ben didn't want to go, and Aaron was like making move towards pajama time.
Yeah.
And
sorry.
I was like, fuck, we should go.
I figured you should at least have a nudge,
Yeah.
You didn't have to go. There wasn't like a grade associated with it, but the entire grade was there. And I, of course, seeing all those people that we know so well is always awkward for me. But
yeah, I don't know a lot of them all that well.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of parents who have kids in like Jack's grade who were there, who I talked to. But as far as Ben's, because Ben doesn't have a ton of friends.
Yeah.
He struggles with that. And
Noah has the same problem in that grade.
Yeah. And so there really is no parents that like I hang out and associate with. So I spent like an hour standing awkwardly up against the wall, talking to you occasionally. But you were holding court, man. Like this is a steady succession of parents. You seem to be well known in the community.
Unfortunately.
They all come up and want their their time to talk to you.
Yes, they want to know, where have you been? What have you been doing?
Yes.
How's the store? That's my favorite one. How's the store doing? In other words, you haven't been up there ever.
Have you been downtown in the last year?
Everything is closing. It Bagels closed.
That hurt, that one. I used to eat there all the time.
The place next to my old shop closed down, the florist.
By the way, your old shop, is that guy ever open?
I think that was a front for something.
Okay.
Because the guy owned another cell phone shop across the street.
Oh.
And was surreptitiously opening this one. I think whatever scam he was working out didn't pan out or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I've never seen it open.
Yeah. It's really...
the whole thing's pretty shady.
Yeah. So I drag you out to this science fair, and I had zero My wife didn't even come to this. It was just me. And I had zero expectations for Noah because, I don't know, I didn't even see him really work on it. All I did was yell at him to do it, and then I sort of forgot about it. And so there he is. He did this project, which was pretty cool. It's very... it's very goes along with how much we talk about grammar and word usage and in the house and just vocabulary. So he must have come up with this because I didn't give it to him. It was a poll to see how people pronounce things, like what are the percentages of people who say caramel instead of caramel.
Right.
And he had a few words and he had a QR code and it was pretty cool, but I didn't think much of it, to be honest with you. I thought, oh, all right, he's squeaking by again, He had a nice looking board. Yeah. Which, had a lot to do with my wife. But he put together a nice slideshow. He's good with that stuff. And so I had zero expectations. So I figured nothing's going to happen, whatever. But Noah, he stands in front of his science project the entire time and sells it. Every parent walks by and he sold his project. He was like going over it. He got them to vote. And he like he says, 40-year-old women love me. And he won the first overall just in popular vote, basically.
Yeah.
He's like the Al Gore of science fairs.
So there's like...
He won.
There are awards that are given out by... the teachers for the projects, and then there's the popularity contest. And your son was hustling all week, apparently, to get his peers to vote for him and stuff. And it was pretty wild.
It's unbelievable because it's not like he's a popular kid. Like, where there's like, he doesn't have like a ton of friends, like at all. I keep trying to get him to hang out with Ben, but it's like they're such loners.
Yeah.
Like I feel like they're, it's like the lone wolf syndrome. But so I was proud of him. I was shocked, and then I was mad at myself for not taking it more seriously. So I really tried to make up for it with overly praising him, and then feeling guilty that I dragged you out to this thing just to watch, Noah schmooze the whole room.
Well, Ben's science teacher came up to us and started talking, and as soon as she said, I wish I could have given them all awards, I was like, let's leave. I'm like, there's nothing coming our way today. Whatever. I mean,
Noah sold his way out of it.
I don't know. I think Ben tried to get Noah to go to round one on Saturday.
Ooh,
and it was a no-go.
I don't remember what we were doing. It's been so crazy lately. My parents got dragged to Ohio to see my brother's nephews. I don't know if I told you, my brother for Christmas got my parents tickets from Ohio back to Long Island, and then said he would drive them to Ohio to visit both of my nephews. And I said, Dad, I don't know if you should do that. I mean, that sounds really rough. You're going to drive.
10-hour drive.
And in any case, they did it. My dad's like, oh, I want to see, my grandkids and get it. And they haven't been anywhere in, 10 years or something. But apparently they had a great time. They're back. And, I guess I'll never get out to Ohio to see Ohio State and all of that stuff. But
why not?
It's like 1,000,000 miles away. Cannon is graduating.
Oh.
He's going to graduate, and then he goes full pro tennis. He's going to just...
You won't just, go to Ohio for shits and giggles?
No.
Cleveland's got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, really?
I recommend.
Interesting.
Cleveland is an interesting city.
Yeah, I would love to go back. I went there once in high school to record a record.
To Cleveland?
Yes.
So did I just say Cleveland is an interesting city?
You did.
I didn't. I don't really mean that.
They have the Browns, don't forget.
Yeah.
But so it was kind of a lot going on this week as usual. And we had some sober-versaries.
Who do we got?
Last week. Well, I saw that Grant has 900 days.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Grant. You're the best.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats. I had kind of a big anniversary. It was January 18th. I got 5 years. Yeah.
Oh, shit, man. That's right. I forgot about that. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
World's biggest sober guy.
Yes.
That's awesome.
It's just...
How does it feel to get 5 years of sobriety under your belt?
It was sort of anticlimactic, you know. Well, when you're not in like one of those groups where everybody like, you know, has a huge meeting and someone speaks, and you know, when I was in AA and I just wanted my 1 year, I was like, I just want to be that guy, you know, up on the podium being like, he's got a year, you know, right. Everybody goes nuts. But I never got that. I mean, now what I do is I buy myself a fancy coin every year.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. And so that makes me feel good.
Did you buy one?
I did. It's hanging on the wall right behind you. I put it on a keychain.
Oh.
You see, it's very cool. Yeah, grab it. Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Isn't that cool?
V for victory.
That's right. 5 years.
Oh, 5. It's a Roman numeral.
Yeah, it's a Roman numeral.
I see.
You know, but it's so funny how important that stupid thing is to me.
Sure.
Because, you know, if you guys are out there and you're in the rooms and you're just like, everything is about these chips, getting these coins, you know, and so I had envied all of these coin getters. And I have a bag of coins. Like, most of them are 30-day chips.
Right.
I have some 3-month, 6, so I kept getting chips. So I always wanted to get... So now that I'm not involved in a regular group, I'm not going to have a bunch of other alcoholics, you know, clapping and all of that stuff. But it's still very satisfying. You know, I never thought I would get this far. That's pretty much the size of it.
And here you are.
And here we are. It's not what I thought it would be, that's for sure.
Do you think counting days is productive? I know we've had this conversation before, and you know, I always say, no, you know, you shouldn't count days because it's not the amount of time that you have, it's the quality of time and it's the way you look at it. But of course I do it the same way that you do it and everybody else does it. Yeah. Because that's a metric that
it's something to hold on to.
Right.
And I remember early recovery, that was pretty much the only attainable goal I could think of. Like, things are so nebulous when you're just trying to quit using drugs and drink. You know, your life is usually in total upheaval. For me, it was jobs, your family, everything is in chaos. But you've got that thing in the back of your mind. You wake up the next day and you've got another day.
Yes.
And
yes,
so
feels good.
The philosophy is good. I think, like anything, it can be used, you know, in a way that is detrimental, you know, to deify days. You have the abstinence violation effect that we've talked about, where when you're
say what now?
The abstinence violation effect, which is when you really deify days, when you make it everything and you make relapsing just destroy your whole sobriety. That's when the day counting kind of gets silly.
That is the issue. In my, you know,
or if someone has a certain number of days or says they do, to give them some sort of extra, you know, wisdom or respect, when it just means, you know, they're telling you they haven't used in however long.
Yeah.
It doesn't really speak to the quality of their sobriety. And it's so it can be a false thing to look at to kind of gauge where you are. Having said that, you know, I guess it's like anything. If it helps you, you know, I think it's good for the early days, but not to oversell it. When someone relapses, you don't want them to think they've lost everything and, you know, stop going to meetings because they don't want to tell you.
Yeah, because there's a lot of artificial shame built into that idea of relapse.
So it's a double-edged sword.
You know, which doesn't necessarily need to be there. All I know is that whenever anybody, like on the Sober Together app or somewhere, anywhere else, people reach out to me and say, you know, oh, I was doing so good, I had almost a year and then I relapsed. I always tell them, I said, the way you have to look at it is, for the last 100 days, you were sober for 99. That means you were 99% sober for that time period, and that's, you know, a win in anyone's book. And people usually feel really good when they hear that, and because they look at it in a different way. Now, I know there are some programs out there that would, you know, freak out about, you know, having
back to day one. They used to say,
right, and that shame, and that kind of came up a little in the book too.
Yeah,
you know, because we didn't just read one book for this show. We read 2 books for this show, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I just finished 90 Days, his second book, like literally 5 seconds before I walked into your house. So
yeah, and which is a great book, and I've read that one before, so it'll probably come back to me. But the first book, and those books should really have been released together, I think, because it's sort of a more complete picture of his journey.
I think Bill needed the money.
Yeah, probably.
Put it out as 2 books, you know. Yeah. So I think we got to. I don't remember when was the last show that we did. Do you know?
A couple weeks ago.
Was it January 17th? Was it before or after that?
Looking at the calendar, it was. My eyes aren't good enough to see the calendar. A couple of weeks ago. Yeah, the 17th was a Saturday.
Was it before then? Or after then?
When it was before then.
Okay.
I think.
It was. Okay, so we got a 5-star review then.
Yes. Let's read it.
From January 17th, from RF, and I know who this is, actually. RF37. Been listening since day one by chance, searching for sobriety podcasts. These guys are the best. Even respond to private messages using their own personal time because they obviously really care about their message. I really appreciate their approach to recovery, as it is all are welcome. And of course, progress, not perfection. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Much apprecied. Are we like that? Do we take time?
I really try to.
Actually, I don't know, RF. I'm sorry. I knew the other review that came in, and I think we read that one already. But. Yeah,
it's really cool. People are getting sober, or getting supported, listening to the show, and hopping on the Patreon. And if you're not a member of Patreon, it's patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages. And we've been doing a lot of discussion and support on the Discord, and the Monksters met up in Florida.
In person.
In freaking person.
Yeah.
It sounded awesome.
I know.
And, it's really cool. So people out there, they're just coming together over the show and just recovering together. And it was nice to see some of the T-shirts.
Yeah. Did it blow your mind as much as it did mine to watch like 5 people gathered together on a pier in Florida wearing T-shirts that were designed by you and me and printed by Jeff. And it's just crazy how the internet works, said the old man.
That interweb. Yeah, so it's really cool. I'm so glad you guys are recovering together out there, and and we're recovering with you. It's just I don't think I would have had to get to the 5 years without this, with all the support. It's just been really great.
You need something.
Yeah.
You need something. I don't know. Maybe you don't need AA. Maybe you don't need, whatever, but you need something. You need some people, some like-minded people to gather together with.
Yeah, it's like anything.
Thoughts and ideas. I've been really off the Discord this past week just because life,
Yeah.
And I've been trying to make time for that. I've been trying to where's your cat going?
That's not my cat. That's a different cat that looks like him.
Right. If he runs across the street like that a lot, he doesn't have much time left.
That's Vladimir. Yeah, he's fast.
The cat is named Vladimir.
Yep.
Is that a Russian family?
It's a Russian blue, the cat.
Okay.
You see what I've done?
So is he a stray, or does he belong to the people that live in that house?
He's one of the pack of strays that we feed.
Okay.
But he's been captured and fixed by the cat lady down the road.
Every neighborhood has a cat lady.
Yeah. She gets them fixed, she traps them, and then releases them, and they have a clip on their ear to denote that they've gotten their shots. And
once they go feral, though, you can't really
they won't
cuddle
come in.
With them.
No, but I've got the inside cat to cuddle with, and then the outdoor cats to make me feel like I'm feeding stray cats, which is exactly what I'm doing. That's the effect I was going for.
Yeah, like my dad did that, and by the time he moved out of his house, he had 25 of them on the porch. He was just throwing food out there. It was like he lived on a farm and he was raising cattle.
Yeah, they're
except
cute.
Nobody ever tried to milk the fucking cats.
No, God. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that's me and my band of roving cats.
Well, it's a good thing you do for the cats of the neighborhood. I guess. I don't know. I'm just spinning right now.
Spin it around. I heard from Sergeant Slaughter yesterday and a couple days before that.
Wait, before we started, he's like, why don't we talk about him anymore? And I'm like, so now you're going to talk about him.
Well, it was just it's worth mentioning only because only. Well, we had a bunch of updates about how he was doing, and then it just sort of dropped off. So in any case, he's just kind of gotten back in touch, and he's doing well. and he just wanted to say hi to the Monksters. I told him, I said, leave a voicemail. We want a voicemail.
Yeah.
And I said, call the RMA hotline at 516-888-6297. And you guys do that too. And we'll play it on the show. You get about 3 minutes. But he said, just tell us how you are on there. He's like, oh, no one wants to hear about all of I said, don't give us the details. Too much details.
No, all the details.
Okay, give us all the details. If you need two.
Want the content.
Call back and we'll play them both. So
just tell us if you've seen the pileated woodpecker that's hanging out in Forest Park in Queens.
Yes. Let me know.
I want to know that because I've seen a lot of video of it, and I actually almost tried to talk Erin into going to Queens on Sunday. I floated a trial balloon. Would you like to spend Sunday chasing a woodpecker around Forest Park? And
she's like, is that a euphemism?
And it wasn't, sadly. But I don't think that went over so well. I don't know. Although I did see an eagle yesterday in Oyster Bay.
Ah.
Bald eagle.
Really?
Yep.
Where? Was he sitting on something?
The corner of Cleft and West Shore Road.
Okay, just like sitting there.
Sitting on a branch.
Well, what are you supposed to do when you see an eagle? You take a pic for your club. I take a
picture.
And then what? Do you post it on a...
I post it in longislandbirds.com.
Aha.
And I say, I've seen eagles where before there were no eagles. And I get lots of middle-aged, applause from all the men in there. And
yeah, Sergeant Slaughter does the birding. And he tried to explain it to me one time, and it sounds like fun. I just...
Does it sound like fun to you?
Kind of. I mean,
you're
it's
not
like
old enough yet.
You're always chasing these birds around with your camera, and then there's a whole group of you, and you all upload the pictures, and you keep score. It's like fantasy football with cameras and birds, basically.
You go your whole life without even caring about birds until you hit like around 50, and then all of a sudden they become interesting.
Wow, birds. Birds.
Life slows down.
It does.
By the way, I joined the AARP last week.
You did not.
I did, because I got like $75 a night off hotel room in San Diego. The funniest thing is Erin gets a card too because she's a
little younger than you, though.
Yes, 10 years younger.
10 years.
She's like your age.
Yeah.
So now she's in the AARP.
Nice.
As well.
AARP. The benefits are endless.
So I was coming back from Scranton after dropping my son off. I'm 55 years old. I just turned 55 at the beginning of January, right? And that number for some reason is kind of stuck on me. I'm like, it's not 54, it's fucking 55.
Double nickels.
And I'm driving back from Scranton. I stop at a Taco Bell somewhere in East Bumfuck, Pennsylvania, and I pull up. And I decide not to go to the drive-thru because I got to go to the bathroom. So we're 55 and want to talk. So I go into the thing and I'm ordering, the tacos and whatnot. And Erin's using the bathroom, and the woman at the counter is like, "Will you be using the senior discount?" And I'm like, "What the fuck?" And I look at her, and I'm like, usually when I've gotten that twice before, and both the times the person who was asking me was like 18, and I'm like, well, they don't know how old adults are. If you're 30, you could be 80, right?
Senior discount.
And but this woman was like in her 60s, so she looked at me and she could tell that I was somebody that might use a senior discount. I was fucking pissed. But I did get 2 sodas for free.
I mean...
So I wasn't that upset.
I've been looking forward my whole life to getting a senior discount, and I'm almost there.
Don't. Because it means that when you get out of the bed in the morning, things hurt for no reason.
So recovery in the old ages.
Yeah.
Sponsored
We're going to have to change the name of the show at some point.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. In 20 years, what are we going to call the show? We're going to have middle-aged people on to tell us what they're up to.
I mean, I thought we had a nice spread. You're in your 40s, I'm in my mid-50s, and it's sort of like, we cast a wide net, right?
We do.
We have some listeners in their 70s, and we have some in their 30s, right? So it's like, it's marketing perfection.
That's right. That's right. We're covering a lot of ground. And
except I feel old lately. I don't know what the fuck.
It's the weather. It's the not sleeping.
Yeah.
It's the constant everything.
I haven't been sleeping too well either.
Oh, God. So, it's starting to wear on you, but how do we stay fresh?
I don't know. How the fuck did we stay fresh?
I drink coffee.
My coffee consumption's through the fucking roof.
Yeah.
Through the roof. I drink like 4 cups of coffee a day now.
What about vitamins?
I take D1 and B12 together because I heard it was good for seasonal affective disorder. And I have found that I am less depressed this year than I have been in the past. Now, is that a placebo effect? I don't know. But whatever it is, I'm going to keep taking it.
The placebo effect is real. It's like 40% or something in double-blind studies. So, Hey, but once you know it's the placebo effect, doesn't it just like vanish? Like once you stop believing in the devil, he vanish. Like, don't give it any energy.
Listen, I take the gummies. They taste very good. I take them in the morning.
Gummies.
I also take 4 other gummies that are like
THC.
They're not those
CBD.
kind of gummies. They're not
the free gummies you got from the head shop.
Fentanyl gummies. And I suck fentanyl lollipops all day.
Dude, I used to have a friend when I was running and gunning. This guy, he would somehow produce these. He would just be at a party and he'd be sucking on those weird lollipops. And I remember being like, what is that? It looked so gross. And he like showed me the wrapper, fentanyl, 0.2%, whatever. And that was like 15 years ago before fentanyl was. So somehow, they really have fentanyl lollipops. I've never tried them.
And all of a sudden everybody's so worried that the kids are going to get their hands on edibles. But meanwhile, they've been making fentanyl lollipops for 20 years. Where was the worry that kids were going to start sucking on those fuckers? But has anyone OD'd on a fentanyl lollipop? Is that possible?
Probably. You'd have to like...
Are they very strong?
I don't think so, because they're made, I think, for people in the hospital who can't take pills or something like that. Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he didn't die of that. I think that was a motorcycle accident.
Oh, shit. That got dark really fast.
Yeah, so
sorry, man.
Moving right along.
Where are we at? What do we got? 35 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the portrait of the addict as a young man.
Yeah, it's the book is Portrait of the Addict or an Addict.
I don't know.
It's Portrait of an Addict as a Young Man, and if you notice the title, it's sort of a takeoff on James Joyce's The Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man.
James Joyce didn't do half as much crack as this guy did, though.
No, and just a comparison, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, it's the first novel of James Joyce, and it was a modern. It traces the religious and intellectual awakening of young Stephen Daedalus, Joyce's fictional alter ego, whose surname alludes to Daedalus, Greek mythology's consummate craftsman. Why did I read that? I was just wondering if...
Because you're a fucking English major.
And I wanted to just put it in my head so that when we talk about this book, I want to see if there's any parallels. Like, I wonder what other reasons if it was just a clever name grab type of thing. But this is Bill Clegg, Portrait of an Addict as a Young Man. And it's, like I said, a harrowing crack-a-log.
Yes. Bill Clegg, who wrote this, he wrote it in 2010. So we're a little late to the party in terms of reviewing this this book. And his follow-up book, 90 Days, which traced his attempts to get 90 days of sobriety after the happenings of the first book, was written in 2012. So Bill, he was a literary agent. He was in a committed relationship with a supportive partner. He was gay. I mean, which is not relevant, but not really.
The partner was gay, or he was gay?
Yeah, I think both. I think both.
Okay.
He had a perfect life in New York City. He had a lot of friends, colleagues. He started a literary agency with a partner, and he walked away from all of it and embarked on a 2-month crack binge that he started when he was released from rehab. And the relapse cost him his house, his money, his career. He almost died. And yeah, I mean, he'd had substance abuse issues for his whole life. And it was very interesting how like his younger life tracked mine a little bit, or I identified with a lot of things in his...
Yeah, he talks about his growing up, and I think what he's trying to do is explain to us and himself maybe the origin of all of these neuroses.
Yeah.
And so he goes into...
Well, he had this problem when he was a kid, like he couldn't pee. He would stand in front of the toilet and have to hop up and down for like 45 minutes before he could pee, and then it would come out uncontrollably and splash all over everything.
Yeah.
And his father was
abusive.
Yeah, emotionally and if not physically abusive. I mean, he was also a drinker, alcoholic, drank a lot of whiskey, and couldn't figure out why his son just couldn't pull himself up by his bootstraps. And the interesting thing about this is this guy was raised, his father was an airline pilot. This guy was raised in a upper class suburban environment up in Connecticut, and then later on in New Hampshire. And I go through Goodreads and I read some of the reviews of this book because I kind of want to see what was the zeitgeist around the time that the book came out. And there were so many people that were piling on this guy because they're like, oh, it's just another privileged, white guy who, had everything going for him and, selfishly threw it all away. And you could always tell, like, just sort of like doing a psychological analysis of the reviews on Goodreads of addiction memoirs. Who has had an addict in their family that has fucked things up? Who is addicted themselves and has insight into how these stories go? And who has no clue and just looks at this completely from the outside? But and that annoyed me because he could be the wealthiest, most privileged guy in the face of the earth, and it's still the same. Yeah. It's the same thing that happened to him, that happened to me, that happened to you.
Right. And it's this ignorant view that somehow it's even worse if you've had what should have been a picturesque upbringing.
Right.
And yet you idiot, you've thrown it all away. I mean, you had it all. Now you're whining about it and trying to make more money. It's just like they're not getting it. Right. Like the point is that this disease touches people from all socioeconomic, the whole spectrum of people, and no one's addiction or problems in addiction is any less valid than the next.
Right.
And so this, and we're obviously, or I'm defensive over it because I'm sort of in that same,
Yeah, me too.
I threw it all away and, and tried to get it back and stupidly got addicted to this stuff. But I think it's the way he describes what he went through. It shines a light on a group of people who need just as much help as celebrities or very, people who have it bad. It's just as important. And I think it was good. It was well done.
The funny thing is, I didn't feel that way about Matthew Perry. I called him out for his obscene wealth and privilege and all that stuff. But I think the issue with Perry wasn't so much that
he was disingenuous.
I didn't think that Perry was a privileged person who didn't, suffer. I just didn't like the way he was grinding it in everyone's face through the entire book. At least that was my perception of it. But this guy, maybe he's a better writer. He's he's certainly so my own crack experience lasted for roughly 5 or 6 years, from 1986 to 1991. And I was in a lot of situations like this guy, and there's a quote from the book that really resonated with me that said, "There will never be a time when I smoke crack that doesn't end with me on my knees, sometimes for hours, fingering the floor like a madman for crumbs." And I was like, oh, yes. Yeah. Yes, been there, done that. And so the book really got inside my head, because he narrates in excruciating detail.
Yes. And poetic detail.
Everything, the whole run, it was a 2-month-long run. And he basically did it day by day.
Yeah, it's almost like a diary.
Yeah. I thought I was pretty bad, but I'm kind of rank amateur compared to this guy, because he would go for weeks on end.
And part of it was the culture that he found himself in. I think he got into book publishing, and from college, and there was a series of benefits he had from being, from having certain types of friends, going to certain schools, so he gets himself into the book. It was like book publishing industry.
Yeah.
And so he sort of, all of his neuroses, he tries to soothe with what's around him. And it sounds like, he was seeking it. But he was a very high functioning, let's say, crack addict for a little bit. And I thought that was important to highlight, that it really shows how you can appear to have it together, and really underneath the surface, you're a crack fiend.
Well, I mean, he was an alcoholic first, and then the crack came. And I mean, from my own perspective, there was never a time in my life that I did cocaine that I hadn't been drinking first, ever.
Right.
To me, they were like the two things were married at the hip, but one always came first, right?
Right.
But the idea that you can be a functional crackhead,
it's extremely difficult.
I have questions about that. I mean, he may have thought that he was being functional, but it didn't take him very long.
Right.
I mean, you can disappear and you can have a day or two, a lost day or two, and then reset the clock, and 2 weeks later you can do it again, and you can carry on like that for a period of time. But when you're going back to back, there's no functionality. There's just, you're getting from one hit to the next hit to the next dealer to the next this, and you're out, and you keep going until you run out of money, or you run out of time, or whatever.
Well, that was half his problem. Was what he says was $70,000 or something in the bank at the start of this run,
right?
And so he just details, like, going through basically all of that, and you just watch as his relationship falls apart, as the things that he's worked so hard for, and and that he loves, he just slowly starts to not care, not show up. It's the same thing that I did. I had all of these things going for me, and then the more I focused on getting the next hit, whether it be crack or heroin or whatever I was into at the time, or a drink, you just stop showing up. And then as you do that, it sort of piles up. People notice, your family, like you start to notice. Well, he talks about his family is trying to reach him, to talk to him, and then
they just kept turning the phone off. And it really goes into like this whole paranoia that he experienced, like when he was supposed to fly and meet his boyfriend over in Europe, because his boyfriend had a film over in one of those film festivals over there. I forget which one, but he gets to Newark Airport and he misses the flight.
Because this was rough to read. I had a hard time with this
because his assistant didn't call the taxi in enough time to make it to the airport, so he misses the flight. They put him on the next flight, but he has like 6 hours or 8 hours to kill, or maybe it's the next morning. So he takes a taxi to a hotel near Newark Airport. Asks the cab driver if he parties. The cab driver says, yeah.
That's so awkward. I was like cringing. He's like, he always goes after the cab driver, like, do you party?
Yeah, but he still had a bag of crack in his pocket and a stem. And so he's smoking in the hotel room, and then he figures, well, I got several hours to go before the next flight. So he calls his dealer, Happy in the city, who then drives out to Newark Airport and gives him like thousands of dollars worth of crack that he proceeds to continue to smoke in the airport until it's time for him to try and go back to the airport and make the flight. And then as he's walking through the lobby, he sees what he calls the J.C. Penney's. It's all these guys who were dressed up like...
He begins to detail his cocaine psychosis, which starts to take over.
Total paranoia. He thinks like everybody in the lobby is following him. He gets in the cab. He goes back to the airport. He's smoking crack in the bathroom at the airport. He gets on the plane, and then he gets on the plane and he thinks the whole thing is an elaborate setup. Just to bust him.
He's really descended into madness.
Yeah, so he says something like weird to the flight attendant, who gets the captain, and they throw him off the plane.
Yeah, he says something to her like, I know what you're planning. Yeah, it was something like that.
And this is right after 9/11, so it didn't go down so good.
I'll be right back.
Gets the captain, they throw him off the plane. They tell him they can put him on the next plane the next day.
Now, they're very helpful because he's got a first-class ticket.
Right.
So speaking of privilege, he's getting a little bit more leeway, I'd say.
Yeah. But then he goes back to the hotel, right? Or
he has to go back.
No, he has to... I don't know. Somehow he gets in a cab. He goes back to Manhattan. Continues. He just finally blows off the flight entirely.
It just gives me so much anxiety, like thinking about. He's got this flight coming up, and he keeps smoking more crack, and you know how that feels. Like you're never leaving that hotel room. You're missing that flight.
Yep. And he did, and that was sort of like the beginning of the spiral over the next 2 months. And towards the end of the run, when he's like walking around in Lower Manhattan, like. It's so funny, and I remember this too, like how you can find fellow travelers on the crack road. Like it's not hard. You look a certain way at a certain hour of the day, like in the middle of the day, you just kind of bump into people in Alphabet City, down on the Lower East Side, and then there's knowing looks, and then you start talking, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in some weird apartment like this, like he did, and then
that woman, the old lady, the crack smoker,
and I had my share of that. Like up in the Bronx, I used to go to Freddy's Crack House like every Friday night, Friday at Freddy's, with my check that I got from the Bronx Zoo, and I'd cash the check at the check cashing place, show up at Freddy's on Friday night, and leave sometime like late Saturday without $1 in my pocket, and the birds chirping outside, and there's that feeling, and then I'd be like, well, I don't have any money for the rest of the week, and I. Like rinse and repeat, but so, and then that whole thing where he like is sneaking, he can't find anywhere to go because no hotel is going to rent him a hotel because he looks so strung out, and he goes into the store and he buys a new sweater and he puts it on, and he has a couple of loops added to his belt, and I'm like, it just really like was like getting hit in the head with a baseball bat, kind of remembering how that went down.
That was so painful, and just remembering that the kind of strange people that you find, friendships with in those scenarios, like between 10 and 5 a.m.
That's
looking for crack.
Overstating the case, my friend. Friendship is not what that is.
I mean, if you've been on the run like this, on a run, the people you end up with and the places you go can sometimes be the scariest part. Now, he lucks out. He's like, when he's walking around looking for a hotel, and they're not letting him in. Like, he tries to go to the Hotel Giraffe, which I've stayed in, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my wife and I used to go there. It's a really cool little boutique hotel. And so he describes going in to get a room, and the person, it's like a younger guy,
right,
starts checking him in, and then the manager comes over and she's like, oh, hold on one second. And she looks at the computer and goes, it looks like there's nothing tonight. I'm so sorry. And he's like, oh, just to be rejected. And then he starts to walk, I guess, down the street or to a worse part of town, maybe. And he sees people congregating outside, something like from The Wire. I don't know if you've seen that show, The Wire, where it's those courtyard, it's something like that. And he can eyeball, there's one guy who looks like he's in charge.
Right. Or
it probably is selling things, or everybody's coming to him. And then he looks the guy in the eye, and the guy, I think, recognizes instantly what this guy needs, and he's like, I need a place to go, to be. And so the guy says, he goes, I'll make it worth your while, right, is what Bill says. And so the guy, for some reason, trusts him, brings him upstairs to a woman probably in her 60s or 70s who does nothing but smoke crack and knit in this little apartment.
She makes these weird art projects that he describes as like being 25% away from being beautiful or something.
Yeah. So he finds himself, and then he gives the guy $200. But the guy goes, "So, is it worth my while or something?" And he goes, hands him $200. He goes, "Yes, it is." Yeah. So Bill goes into this apartment, this really small apartment, in probably one of these, those, what do you call them, the project type buildings, or do you think it was something different, like in the Bronx?
I'm pretty sure I know where he was. Yeah, he was on the Lower East Side. There's a couple of housing projects down there. Right.
So he gets in there, and he doesn't seem fazed at all, because she seems, if you've seen The Matrix, I picture the Oracle, right, making the cookies, except. And so he gives her money to go get, and they just smoke crack together. Right. And he feels, I guess, safe. But I mean, I got that feeling that I used to get when I would find myself in these places. Yeah. And when you just like become aware for a minute of just where the fuck you are. And man, I got those chills. Yep. It's like that haunted feeling. You're like, oh, fuck, here I am.
I'm so fucking glad I don't do that anymore.
Oh, my God. The place is, ugh. So, but he gets out of it, he gets out of that place. And then, he details like exactly, and it's amazing the way his relationship falls apart, the way he treats his boyfriend, who they were very close, and with some very weird, situations, and you can just see that this guy who's pretty normal, high functioning, doesn't know what to do, and it reminded me of all the loved ones in my life that when I was in that state, like that look in their eye, like. They just don't know what to make of what you're doing, because it makes zero sense.
That relationship, though, was strange, and he alludes more to it in the second book, 90 Days, which sort of picks up where the first book left off. But that it was an incredibly codependent relationship to the point where this guy, like they actually rekindled their relationship in the second book. But it became clear that if he didn't need him the same way. They didn't need each other. And so it kind of fell apart.
Yeah. Like, interesting.
And, I have my issues with the whole concept of codependency, but it was just interesting.
The boyfriend needed to take care of a falling, bird or whatever, a wounded bird. And he needed, so that was the dynamic. So once that goes away, and then you have that, 90 days. I would like to get into that, because it's on his journey. Like I did 90 meetings in 90 days. And so he kind of details his life going through that and the post, addiction crisis mode. And the end of the book is very, it was jarring, I'd say.
The end of which book? The first one?
Yeah.
Well, the way he sort of bottomed out.
It ends with the bottom, basically.
Yeah, I mean, he plumbed the depths and found other bottoms after he supposedly got out of rehab, but it was pretty much a bottom. I mean, the money in his account went from $70,000 to like $1,000 or whatever, and he finally gets himself in the Gansevoort Hotel and gets himself a room. The paranoia, he thinks people are going to. There's a bunch of SUVs across the street with guys with binoculars.
He's in full
in there,
psychosis. Yeah.
Smoking away. He kept ordering bottles of vodka from room service and drinking them and blasting his way through.
He does it right, though. I mean, he gets bottles and he's like living it up, for a little bit.
I mean, the crackhead in me from way back when was thinking like he really could have stretched that money out a lot better.
Yeah, he was doing way too much.
I'm like, this guy's got champagne taste on a beer budget, man. He needs to dial it back. Bottles of Stoli from room service.
40 bags. The guy happy comes and just throws 40 bags of crack on the table, and he's like, "All right, I'll be good for a couple of days." Where it should last you a month.
But then he started checking him. His suicidal thinking sort of on the surface, which is kind of where mine was during that period. I would just kind of like contemplate whether or not if I jumped off the balcony, I would die if I hit the ground. And he says that a lot. Like, is this hotel room high enough that when I'm done with this, I can just jump off and hit the ground? And I used to think like that all the time. I'm like, if I jumped in front of the train right now, would that do it? It's a horrible way to live, and it's really the coming down off the crack is because when that's gone out of your system, like you're not suicidal anymore. Like at least I never was.
I was the same way. You get in those situations, and suicide suddenly becomes one of your options.
Yeah, and so he basically tried to use himself to death, like between the crack, and then he bought all these over-the-counter sleep aids, pills, and he took like 20 or 30 of them or something.
Yeah,
at the end, and then he wandered over to he doesn't remember what happened. The pills started kicking in, and then he wanders over to his old apartment where he lived with his boyfriend, and the boyfriend had changed the locks and this whole like thing. And then he ends up in rehab up in White Plains in New York.
And there was a moment too, because while this is all going on, he also had this publishing company, or was it PR or something?
No,
he was publishing.
He was a literary agent. He represented a number of. Actually, I went back and read a number of famous authors.
This guy's going to come install the door right now.
Right
God
now,
damn it! He's supposed to come at 11. Just watching how his business also collapses.
Yeah.
And he just starts vanishing, and then at some point he just tells his partner. I'm not coming in. You should move on.
Right. Okay, we're going to take a break and be right back after these words. And we're back.
And we're back.
You know what? The guy's he's got hearing aids.
He's what?
He has hearing aids. So maybe he can't hear us talk about doing drugs.
So he can't hear us. Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
So there's a man that's come to work on Nat's front door, but he's like 80 and he's got 2 hearing aids in. So as we talk about doing crack and stuff, maybe he won't hear us.
Yeah, so sorry. He was supposed to come at 11. We're getting a front door. This is very inconvenient. But just getting back to what I was just talking about, because this kind of it reminded me of situations, because I had these businesses over the last since 2000, and I also had a nasty drug habit and drinking habit, and there was definitely more than one time I was in the middle of a great opportunity or working at a startup or a nice company, and I had a good chance. I just flushed it down the toilet, and I remember feeling that way. You've got a partner or someone that's counting on you, that you've started a business with or something, and you just can't get it together.
Yeah.
And I could hear that in the way he talked to his partner. You could just hear it's that huge letdown. You're letting yourself down. You're letting this partner down, and you're throwing it away. And he does.
He does.
And even in that moment when he's writing to her, when he tells Kate, just go on without me. This isn't. I've gone out again. I've gone back, and he burns it all down.
Burns it all down.
Yeah.
But I guess he needed, sort of like Joseph Naus realized that he needed to burn it all down to rebuild it back up in a better, healthier way. I mean, Naus was a little more upfront about, having that, like, in his consciousness. He had like sort of a light bulb moment when he was like, I had to design this perfect self-destruction in order to rebuild, Well,
it's a nice way of looking at it if you have the positive spin, like a horrifying drug.
He came out of rehab like over $100,000 in debt, to lawyers, to his partner, to all this stuff. And
he had the same type of thing with his law firm. I mean, that's for the high functioning quote unquote addict. There's a lot of times a great job that goes down the toilet with your addiction.
Yeah. So that's at the end of Portrait of the Addict. He goes to a rehab in White Plains and spends, how long was he there for? A month?
28 days probably.
Yeah. And then comes back to the city and tries to restart his life. And I guess there was a few failed intervention attempts when he was on his 2-month run, and he would just literally ran away from the people that came to try and drag him off to rehab. But he seems that he's going to take it more seriously this time at the beginning of 90 days, which they tell you to do the 90 and 90, right? And that's how you jumpstart your recovery.
I believe in that. I did a 90 and 90, and it was when I had no car either. So that's one of the reasons I still love AA is because it got me through times that I couldn't have gotten through otherwise.
I mean, my last binge in 1993, maybe, because I had one last hurrah like this guy, although not as, it was only a night long. I was in an apartment with my girlfriend at the time, and we had spent the day apple picking and had a few drinks, and I was like, I'm going to go and get some ingredients to make an apple pie. And I walked out of the house, and then I was drunk, and I ran into some guy in the street, and I came back at 7:00 the next morning with a bag with like butter and flour in it. And she threw me out. She's like, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. And I was like, okay. And I went home to my parents' house on Long Island, curled up in a ball, and then called a friend of mine the next day who had been in AA for like 5 or 6 years at that point, and he took me to a meeting, and I did the same thing, the 90 and 90. And I didn't go to too many meetings after that, but managed to stay sober for a couple of years.
It gets you into ensconces you in the don't drink. There's a social aspect. They pick you up if you need a ride.
That's the good part of it, but the bad part of it, I mean, to me, like, I'm watching this poor guy suffer like relapse after relapse after relapse, and there's nobody says to him, maybe you need some naltrexone, or maybe you need to see a therapist, or maybe you need, it's just like, keep coming back, which is great if you keep coming back.
If you don't jump off that balcony on your next relapse,
right,
then you can come back.
Right, but just like everybody else in these rooms that he was going to, they all relapse, right, like regularly, and and he starts wondering, am I one of those people he actually says that's constitutionally incapable of being honest? And I'm like, there we go.
Yeah. It's a very dangerous attitude. And, he's lucky. I mean, I haven't caught up with him since he wrote 90 Days, as far as I didn't follow where he's at now.
Well, he's got 2 novels out now, actually. And one just came out a couple years ago. So I assume he's still okay.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, but he was, he never names AA because, the 12th, one of those traditions, whatever, but he's definitely all in,
Yeah, and I would love to get him on the show. I confuse him frequently with Augustine Burroughs, who's a famous addiction memoir author who wrote the book Dry, because they have a similar vocal affect. It's all New York City. It's drugs. It's like, I think he's in advertising or something, and he's in publishing. But it was a very, very good book. I thought he just wrote really well, and there's a lot more in that. I think what we should do probably is discuss the second book, the 90 Days, maybe on the next show. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it really isn't much to it. I mean,
he just gets clean, basically.
Yeah, but it takes a lot of fits and starts, and there's a lot of like self-awareness that starts to dawn on him, and it's a very rocky road. There's a lot of relapses, and the one that scared me, let's just finish Bill Clegg today.
Yeah, okay.
There's not much more. I mean, at the end of the book, he says that he submits the 90-day manuscript to his publisher, and then he goes to Bangkok to meet a friend over there to hang out for a little bit. And he goes to when he's on his way from the airport to the hotel, the taxi driver, I don't know what it is with this guy and taxi drivers, but he always seems to get in trouble with taxi drivers.
Yep.
The taxi driver's like, you like boy, you like girl, you like drugs? And
he's
he goes,
like,
yes. And so the taxi driver gives him a phone number. He goes to the hotel, and a couple weeks earlier, his friend John had said to him, they were sitting in the lobby of a hotel, and his friend John said to him, I had the best gin and tonic of my life in this hotel. And that thought just lodged in his head, and he started like working over that thought and kept picturing the glass with the
beads of sweat
and the lime and everything. And he couldn't let go of it for like weeks. And so he finally gets to the hotel a couple of weeks later, checks himself in. He's got this guy's number in his pocket, and he's 6 years sober. Mind you, he's just submitted the manuscript 90 days.
Right.
And he calls room service, orders a bottle of vodka, drinks 4 drinks, and is on his way to go call that number.
Right.
When he sees that his sponsee, somebody he's been helping out, has called him like 4 or 5 times across international date lines and needs help, and it kind of smacked him back to his senses.
Yeah, it's that 12th step, that one alcoholic helping another.
Yeah, but then he lied about he's told everybody that he almost relapsed, and he said, as soon as I told that lie, all of a sudden, like, I felt like I was lying about everything. Like I had this hidden personality again. Like I was hiding things, and so like this whole idea of like not brutal honesty, rigorous honesty.
Yes.
He finally comes clean, and then I guess adds another chapter to 90 Days, the book. But he's like, but it was funny because he's like, I had this vision in my head of this perfect gin and tonic,
the romanticizing.
In this bar, and he's like, and at the end of the day, I'm in my hotel room, and it's a dirty glass of vodka with like half of an orange peel that I found in the fruit basket in it. And he's like, that's what. How the mind works.
Yeah, it's so funny, and it rings so true that, especially the honesty thing, like half of the work I had to do to get clean and get 5 years is to learn how to be honest, because I got in such a habit, basically, of everything was a lie. And I almost didn't know how to be honest. And so that was one of the good things about going to these recovery groups, and even though it was court ordered, is it forces you to at least try.
Right.
And get sort of an accepting response and that sort of thing. So yeah, I can relate to that, because there have been times in my sobriety where it would be easy to lie about something to not have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying every single time I'm honest, but when I am faced with that choice, I really struggle, because I know that the dishonesty, even if I'm being honest about something stupid that doesn't even matter, I want to do that because I remember who I was. I remember that lying for no reason, just self-preservation. And so in order to keep, your good habits going and your conscience clean, for me, just like he said, you keep that rigorous honesty, and that goes a long way, and it's not easy.
I think that's why you see so many addiction memoirs.
Yeah.
Also, actually, because people feel like they need to get the whole thing out in front of as many people as possible, so there's nothing.
You know what they call that?
Left.
Confession. Prayer.
Right.
Confession.
Okay.
Good works.
It
sounds like religion.
You can confess in a little booth.
Yeah. Depends on what kind of booth. Is it Times Square of the 80s?
That's a different kind of confession. Or on your knees, either way.
Either way.
Or you can confess publicly in front of thousands of people. If you happen to be a literary agent, it's helpful.
Or you have a podcast, and we can spew all of our stuff all over the place, so everybody is.
That's like Times Square in the 80s too.
Right. So
they're good books. 2 thumbs up for me. I don't know if that's because he's a good writer or because I identified with a lot of the story. I'm not an AA guy, but I really appreciated him sharing the entire arc of his recovery.
Yeah, and it's a common one. Nick Sheff had the same thing with his books. Just when he finished writing his memoir, I think it was Tweak.
Yeah.
He goes and relapses horrifically, and his second book is about in between the 2 books.
And you got to give yourself content somehow, right?
Yeah, but let me just say this. These books are predictable in a lot of ways. I mean, it follows, all of these addiction memoirs follow this similar story arc, right? So why is this worth listening to? Why is this worth reading? The way he describes his experiences are what really makes this book. And his delivery, when he reads it himself, I like it. He's a little dry, but there's something about these books, kind of like with Joseph Naus, his writing. It's not the same kind of writing, but in the same way. The way he writes these experiences, even though they're kind of, it's been done type of thing, it's really brilliant, or it really spoke to me. So, read these books, listen to them, let us know what you think. Come on the Patreon, on the Discord, or come to the private Facebook group and tell us what you think. Are we far off? Are we getting close? Do you disagree? Agree? I'd love to have these debates and these discussions. I think it's part of what keeps me clean. So let's keep talking about it.
Are we far off, man? Are we far out?
Oh, far out.
Far out, man.
Yeah, far out.
So, Nat, you know what time it is?
Is it recovery in the news?
Just drop that.
Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news. Recovery. Recovery in the news. Motherfucker. Yeah. I was off.
I think he did that at like 120, and I think the
damn it.
recovery the news is more like 100. It's a little.
Sorry, guys. Recovery in the news.
This being Dry January, there are so many alcohol-related articles floating around out there in the
I've noticed this
zeitgeist.
Interesting.
And one just popped up that I thought was good. Actually, a few, and I had to choose one. So from the Washington Post this week, it's On Your Mind column, how cutting back on alcohol can help depression and anxiety. But that's not how it was sold to me on Facebook. They threw another title on it, like even small amounts of drinking can cause depression and anxiety or something along those lines. Is this guy in the doorway now?
Yeah.
All right. So people, there's construction noise.
Yeah.
So people taking part in Dry January may notice they have an improved mood, clearer thinking, and better sleep. Okay. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear that, but there's a lot of construction going on. But what I like about these articles, and what I like about this article in particular, is that people are getting to the point where they're actually talking about... Hold on. It sounds like we're about to have a lot of noise in here. I think this guy's going to be running a circular saw while Nat moves shoes and things out of the way to let this fella get going here. Great timing. Okay. So what I think is really interesting about these articles is they're finally starting to talk about the negative effects of alcohol use, even when you're drinking amounts that would not be considered, problematic.
Right. Like the New York Times has had a couple of articles when it's like experts, is that one of them where like experts are saying even a little bit is harmful, so why are we still promoting alcohol?
That's kind of how this article came across my Facebook feed. But what they really do is they go into the fact that they talk about that alcohol is immediately rewarding depending on how quickly you drink and how fast your blood alcohol rises. And it is by turns relaxing, euphoric, and disinhibiting. But most people don't appreciate that while the pleasurable effects of alcohol are nearly instantaneous, the negative effects are delayed, often by several hours or days. And that time lag makes it hard to see the connection between alcohol and its adverse effects.
Yeah, days, months, years. I mean...
But that's like a focus I feel like they don't really take. They're not. What they're saying is you can drink a couple of glasses of wine every day to unwind, but not have any idea like how much that small amount of alcohol is affecting you.
Right.
Like they talk about, the guy who wrote the article says that he has a patient in his mid-40s, I guess he's a doctor, who he was treating for depression, who had become inexplicably anxious and depressed with the return of insomnia after many weeks of solid improvement. And he tried to figure out why he was having these problems. And then when he inquired about his alcohol consumption, he discovered that the guy had resumed his usual habit of 2 or 3 glasses of wine at dinner as soon as he started to feel better, didn't tell his doctor about it, and then all of a sudden had the insomnia every night.
Right.
So, and then he asked his doctor for a prescription for Ambien.
Of course.
And his doctor's like, why don't you stop drinking over the weekend and let's see what happens to your mood on Monday and your sleep over the weekend. And the guy stops and remarkably is able to sleep through the night, and his anxiety goes way down, his depression goes way down.
It's amazing that he could stop.
It is.
Yeah.
You know. But you know, even with moderate levels of alcohol consumption typical of normal social drinkers who are free of any psychiatric illness, you can still experience the negative effects of alcohol on your mood in the days after you've been drinking.
Yeah, and it's a really good sign that this is starting to come out in the media. You know, as much as it's complained about, this media and the way that they manipulate narratives, that can be done in a good way. You know, if it's a good narrative, it's something that to make people healthier. And it seems like in the same way that electric cars have become more hip, cool, and it's like, it's not, you know, and that's helping, you know what I mean? Because in the same way, the alcohol lobby maybe is starting to take a little bit of a hit, you know, because at some point there will be journalists, there will be researchers who aren't in bed with these companies, who are going to grow up just studying this stuff and go, what, this is like, you know, scotch is used to like disinfect wounds in zombie movies, you know, and that's evidence right there. You know, and I think that's such a great thing that we're starting to see this, and maybe this will make change the paradigm. But unfortunately, or fortunately, cannabis is sort of rising up to fill that void. Right. You know, it's like when you kill one terrorist leader, another one raises up. Yeah. So what's next?
I'm less worried about a bunch of people stoned than I am about
it's harm reduction. You know,
I mean,
'tis what it is.
I mean, you know, just the fact that a big paper like the Washington Post or the New York Times is talking about the adverse effects of alcohol on everyday mood, and talking about the empirical evidence that alcohol is a depressant and can cause clinical depression, and you know, increased anxiety even after a night of moderate drinking.
Yeah. The cancer studies are helpful too for people to see that, you know, these actual studies, when they publish it in the Times or the, you know, and like someone like my father will send me the article and it'll say, you know, even a little bit increases your cancer risk. I think it was 30%, the article I read. These are the types of things that they're starting to come out with more regularity. It's going to affect, I hope, people's, you know, intake and their outlook on alcohol.
But unfortunately, like, still at the end of the day, that New York Times article we discussed a couple of weeks ago, they didn't recommend.
At the end, they say, well,
you don't have to stop, even though 2 or 3, you know, drinks a day is a cause for concern about long-lasting effects on your ability to think. Yeah, and you know, you don't have to quit entirely. And even this article, you know. Even if you resume your drinking, you may decide to scale back now that you've seen for yourself some of the downsides of alcohol to your mental health. Like, it just seems like they can never take the final step and say, you know what, this stuff is poison. It's not good for you. You've been manipulated by markets for all these years, marketing efforts, and you really should not drink at all. Well, like, why can't we just, as a society, get that out there?
Maybe in those scenarios, if I'm making excuses for the newspapers, maybe they're taking the Star Trek non-interference policy, the Prime Directive. They want to give you the information, but they don't want to tell you what to do.
No, what they're taking is money from the alcohol industry to advertise. I mean, the New York Times has a Wine of the Month club.
I see, yeah. So they're not, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's one of those things. The people, it's good. They're giving the information, and they're sort of saying, but, you know, I'm not telling you to stop drinking. Right. Maybe it's wink, wink.
But you know what, though? That's what I would needed to when I was reading all these articles and they never said stop, right? You know,
Yeah, 1 glass of wine. It's good for your heart. I've been
Right.
hearing that my entire fucking life. 1 glass of red wine.
And it's not true.
Each night. No, it's fucking bullshit. You just drink grape juice, idiot.
Yeah.
Like, that will give you your antioxidants.
That's right. Just eat a fistful of fucking blueberries. You don't need to you drink wine.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I think
we're done.
we're done.
I have to take my dog to the salon.
Recovery in the news.
It's gone by now.
Okay.
I turn it off by now.
So thank you guys so much for listening. Sorry about the interruptions. I'm just really glad, Mike, that we got to do this because,
So am I.
man, this morning was... I was thinking to myself, maybe we should just push it. You know, maybe we should do it next week. Push
Oh
it
my
real
God.
good.
Wow.
And
You have talents that I keep discovering every time I meet you.
that about does it for today. I know I had a great time. Did you?
Oh, yes.
Thank you so much for listening. Visit us at middleagesrecovery.com, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, Twitter. So tweet us at Twat You Twit. Support your favorite show. That's us. Drop a 5-star review on Apple iTunes. We will read your review on the air. Figure out a way to buy a t-shirt because I don't even know how our website works anymore with that stuff. Or just write us and say hello. It's Mike R at middleagesrecovery.com. Also, Facebook. Come join the Facebook group. It costs nothing.
It's like a cult.
It's exactly like a cult.
Yeah. We'll tell you what to think. Don't worry about it.
We'll tell you exactly what to do, think, and where.
That's it.
And of course, we have the Discord. We're recovering together. The Monksters are meeting up. We're discussing the books. It's great. It's at patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages. Join us and have a fucking blast. And finally, the best way to help the show is to share it with a friend. My only friend is sitting across the table from me, and he's on the show.
Not your
so I
only
can't
friend.
I can't share it with him. But you have friends out there, and I'm talking to you. Go to your friend. You know they're going to laugh. You know they're going to get sober if you send them the show.
It's proven to be the most effective marketing that exists.
It's true.
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth. And as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
Progress, not perfection.
We'll see you next time.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.
Be good.